Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Bob Gardner, who's here to share with us his new book, Built for Freedom: Adventures Through Stress, Anxiety, Depression, Addiction, Trauma, Pain, and our body's innate ability to leave them all behind. Have you tried everything and you just don't know what else to do for your own mental well-being? Well, today's guest is going to share with us how to overcome just that. Bob Gardner is the founder of the Freedom Specialist, a body-based approach to happiness, health, and well-being. He's also the author of the book Built for Freedom and the host of the inspirational podcast Alive and Free. So welcome to the show, Bob Gardner.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm excited for this conversation.
I have been looking forward to this discussion soon as I got a hold of your book. I'm so excited that we're going to have this talk today. Why don't you share with us what even got you on the path for looking into moving beyond stress and anxiety and depression?
Yeah, sure. I was, as a young kid, my father was in the military. We moved around a lot. So I didn't have really a traumatic childhood, but there was a lot of worrying about fitting in and making sure that I was maybe not the most popular kid on the planet, but at least not one of the outcasts, trying to make new friends. And there was a lot of internal dialogue around whether or not I was good enough. That eventually led into me discovering some addictive behaviors where I was compulsively seeking out things on the internet, or where I went eventually into psychedelics and things of that nature to try and help myself feel better in the midst of all of that kind of social anxiety. I felt a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and there were many nights where I found myself wandering the streets at like 3:00 in the morning, hoping to be hit by a bus, just wishing I wasn't here, but not wanting to do it myself because I didn't want to put my family through that level of pain. So I was in that kind of really deep, dark place, just wishing to not exist, but sticking around for the people that I was responsible for. When my wife finally said, this is enough. She had had it with my own angry outbursts or with my own behaviors or how she felt. And so now I was feeling that way, and my family was going to leave, and there was going to be no more, hey, dad walks in the door and the kids go, hey, daddy. And there was going to be no more, laughter and shared jokes and things like that. So in that moment, there was this deep need to figure something out and to fix it. And I had been trying for years. This was 18 years of my life really on this roller coaster up and down. And I had some great moments in the middle of it. Don't get me wrong, but it was a lot of struggle. And so I managed to kind of hold myself together and start to kind of control at least the outward behaviors. But the inside really was the struggle. It was the constant self-talk, or the battles, or the worries about money or stress, and the worries about being good enough, and the worries about all of the other stuff that was going on, that every time my wife would leave home for something, or every time I had a moment, there was just this torrent of, for lack of a better word, just hatred for life and for myself. And so one day she left home to go pick up the kids from school or something. And I was working at night. I was running a Kung Fu school. And there was this battle inside me raging. I was like, I could go get on the internet. I could do something. I know exactly how much time I could do something, and no one would know the better. And in that moment, like, my feet got glued to the carpet, and something inside me broke. And I had this vision of myself at like 90 years old, still going through this same struggle, because that's what I had been taught, that the narrative out there in the environment was that stress, anxiety, depression, addiction, things of this nature are things you're going to cope with. You're going to manage as best you can for the rest of your life. You'll always be a recovering addict. You'll never be free of it. And so I had this image of myself being like, I get to the end of my life, whenever that is, and my biggest resume item is that I spent all those years not relapsing. And that just broke something inside me, because that's not how I wanted. I felt like there was so much potential inside of me to go do some incredible things in the world. And I wanted to focus my life there instead of having an unpaid career in therapy and healing myself and doing the work and looking into the dark side and processing childhood stuff. And so right there, I threw away all of the stuff that I had been taught, all the stuff in the 12-step programs and the therapists and the coaching programs and everything else that I had invested in. tens of thousands of dollars. And I was like, look, everything that hasn't worked. Let me go figure it out. And so I started back from my beginnings, looking back at what were the things that worked for me, the things that I knew helped me be in a place where this wasn't an issue. And I started with all these body-based things that I had learned over the years, some of it from martial arts, some of it from movement and dance, some of it from breath work and breathing. And some body work stuff that I had learned. And I started from there, functional psychology things. And I just started testing things, and I made some mistakes along the way, but eventually found my way to this point. And it wasn't like eventually in years. It was like within a very short amount of time. We're talking weeks. I had found a way to like no longer be plagued by the haunting urges to go act out, as the phrase goes with addicts, no longer be plagued by this negative self-talk that was always on top of me, and like recognizing that life could be a beautiful thing. That has grown since then. But I figured this out and I was like, sweet, I'm done. I am ready to move on. And it wasn't until about 4 years later that I had somebody approach me and tell me, look, Bob, like there are millions of people struggling with the things that you struggled with. And if you've literally found a way to be free of it, not to be coping with it or managing it or setting up all kinds of boundaries and filters and programs and all these other things, but if you've literally found a way to be free of it, then nobody knows how to handle this stuff. You need to go out and help them. And so that was where I was like, look, I'm not a therapist. I'm not somebody who's been educated in this. But again, that stuff didn't work for me. And they said, that's okay. The people that are really looking for help, they don't care whether you're a therapist or not. What they care is, can you get them the results they have, that you have? And so that started the journey. That was like 6 years ago. And since then, I've helped over 1,000 people take whatever it is they're dealing with, whether it was childhood sexual abuse or trauma or PTSD from wartime stuff, or whether it was addictions to a variety of different things, or depression or anxiety, or you name it, body issues and eating disorders and whatnot, and showing them a way to work with their body and mind that trains them to have an instinct for happiness and well-being so that they don't have to sit there and work at it the rest of their life.
Well, you definitely look at that a completely different way than everyone else, which I applaud you, because it takes a lot of courage to go, okay, this doesn't work for me. Let me blaze my own trail and figure out what does. And then to get to this point where you can also teach other people how to do this. How freeing is that?
I would tell you, one of the most remarkable moments of the time when I started working after the first year or so, well, my business partner came on. He was a client of mine and he wanted to help with this. And so I started training him in the things that I was doing, and he took on his first client, which was his sister. And he worked her through some things. And one day I was reading through the responses. I had never spoken with her or anything like that. And we asked her a simple question, like, how do you feel? Like, did you win in going through this process? Does it feel like your life has changed? And her response that she had written back was that everything had changed for her. She no longer looks in the mirror and hates herself and wants to die every day, and no longer feels like she's not worth giving attention to and taking care of. And since then, she went and she figured out her diet and she lost weight and she started feeling empowered to do the things that she'd always wanted to do. And I had never spoken with her. And it was this moment of recognizing that something that I had put together just for myself really had the capacity to help other people well beyond anyone that I even talked to, like that it has the capacity to change a person's life. And it's not just me personally convincing them that this is the right way to do things. And that moment it felt so clean. And it was such a remarkable, eye-opening thing to realize that this is bigger than just, quirky dude found something out that works for him and maybe a few other people. This has the capacity to help a lot of people, even if they never talk to me.
I think that's so empowering. And it must make you feel good to hear this kind of feedback that you're getting, knowing that it's working for all these different people, that you've really put together something that really is a game changer.
Yeah. I look at what I'm doing and I go, I may not have the skills to change the ecology of the planet and work in making that a better place. And I may not have the economic skills to deal with the economy. And I may not have the political savvy to handle, international kind of affairs. But what I can do is teach people at one by one, like at a personal level, how to handle all the discomfort that they've lived with and been taught. This is just a fact of life. the human condition is such that we're always this way, and to give them the keys to recognize that no, humans do experience those things, but that's only if they act a certain way, and that you can live in a totally different way. And when you do that, then domestic violence goes down and crime goes down and relationship issues start to disappear. Children now have parents that are available, and then the next generation grows up a lot better. People start to learn better and faster. They become more productive. They become more capable of driving their life in a direction that they want to drive, all from these basic things. And I go, if there's one thing I can do to make the world a better place for my kids or for a next generation, this feels like it.
I can understand why. It really is changing lives. What tends to be some of the root causes that you see that people come to you for, some of the issues that they deal with?
I started out helping people that were mainly dealing with either addictions to sexual things and pornographic material and some drugs and things like that. And then that really expanded when their wives started coming and wanting help with their own stuff. So what we've seen are people who are dealing with bipolar, OCD, chronic pain, even like some autoimmune disease things. We've helped people with massive clinical depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and obviously addiction of a variety of different sorts, just teaching them how to handle what's going on in their body. The question about a root issue is like such a common narrative in today's society. Everybody wants to handle the root issue, and everybody has a different opinion about what the root issue is. And so some people will say it's a childhood trauma, like Gabor Mate is really big on bringing it all back to something that happened in your childhood. And his definition of trauma is probably looser than other people's. Some people will say it's genetic heritage. Some people will say it's this, that, or the other. And what it all boiled down to in the beginning when I was looking at it was like, yes, people have common beliefs about themselves. They feel like they're not worth something and they're uncomfortable in their own skin. And as a result, they're looking for something that will help them feel better. But chasing the root issue in terms of like a language or a word, obviously a common pattern is they feel not good enough. They feel like they'll never measure up. They feel like nobody likes them, that there's something wrong with them. These were things that I felt. It took me a long time to realize that all of those thoughts, that narrative in my head was built on my own body. So most people will talk about root issues in terms of events in your life, but I'm going to challenge that with people, and I'm going to have them look deeply and go like, yes, but if that were there, if that were really the root issue, then it would be there 24/7. But the reality is, our experience of life changes. Even in my darkest moments, I still had a break. Like I still went to the bathroom and found relief. I still had a yummy meal. I still laughed at a joke on YouTube, and all of the problem disappeared in that moment. So I had to start questioning, is it really that I believe those things? Or is there something else going on that then brings up that belief? And as I started looking at it, I recognized that the brain is not in touch with the outside world. This is not rocket science. I'm sure maybe it took me longer to realize that than most people. But instead, what it's doing is it's gathering information about the outside world from the only tools it has, which is the body. So if my body is ill at ease, then it doesn't matter what's going on in the outside environment. It's all that information is going to be filtered through discomfort and dis-ease. And so my brain, in order to make an experience of that, is going to create an experience that is tinged and tainted and marinated in dis-ease. But when my body is in a state of bliss or joy or ecstasy or ease or relaxation, and then something happens on the outside, all of that something gets filtered through this lens of joy and wonder and happiness and excitement, and it doesn't create the same kind of experience. So I started going back to the body and suggesting to people that, yes, what you think is important. Your thought processes are really incredible ways of assessing and looking at what's going on the inside, but they are byproducts of the state of your body. And if you can train your body to have an instinct of joy and happiness, like something happens on the outside, and if your instinctive reaction is to laugh instead of to complain, suddenly the kind of experience you have in life is very different. And so that's where I focused my effort for myself, was like, because I don't want to have to maintain freedom. I want it to be who I am. At first it was a skill, and then it just became a muscle memory. And so I focused on how can I train my body to handle all kinds of threats, all kinds of anxiety, all kinds of stressors, all kinds of triggers, all kinds of like weird eye rolls that my wife might do in my direction, or the way my kids are yelling, or some financial struggle. How can I train my body to take that information and respond to it from a place of relaxation and clarity of perception so that I am at my best and not pulling myself down to hell in order to operate. I didn't want to be motivated by pain anymore. I wanted to be motivated just by this is what needs to be done, and I can be happy no matter what. So when I'm talking about a root issue with people, that's really where I go. Is I look at them and I go, yes, your history is important in as much as it helps us move the dial. But what's more important is your body. And when your body starts to feel wonderful, it doesn't matter what your history is. You are literally free from it in that moment. You don't have to talk through it. You don't have to process it. Don't have to go digging in and trying to find who's at fault and who to blame and what kind of boundaries to set and all that other stuff. All that stuff goes away. And you don't have to have half of the conversations or even more of those that most people say that you have to do, because all of a sudden you've let it go from your system. And that's really all that matters.
Wow, that's so powerful coming from that vantage point. How does that work with someone that's in constant pain and maybe they can't seem to get to a place where they can move beyond just their body not feeling too hot?
It's a great question. I stumbled into the world of helping people with chronic pain and with pain and just by accident. So in the book, in a couple of the chapters, there's a lady named Amber, and her story's in there in great detail. But she had been diagnosed with like Lyme's disease, Hashimoto's, Epstein-Barr, like 30 other comorbidities. And in the middle of all of that, there was so much pain among all the other things she'd been doing, like 2 months in a Mexican hospital, getting like daily infusions and doing all of the things that the US hadn't approved yet. So she had to go out of the country and trying all the alternative route and the traditional route and everything. And she was in so much pain that she ended up getting on some opioids, and that became like her go-to. The doctors sort of like told her, like, this is going to help you. She was leery about it at first because she didn't want to become an opioid addict, but they were like, look, if you could just have moments where like this, you didn't have pain, what would that be like? And so she sort of bought into it, and it did take the edge off. It never took the pain away completely, but it gave her the ability to function. And she became more and more dependent on it to where she ended up with like a 6-year opioid addiction, to where she would, go meet strangers in a parking lot at 3 a.m. and pay for extra with her kids in the car just because she felt like she needed it and couldn't survive. And they were giving her max dosage of all kinds of different things. And at one point, her husband like realizes this, and he's challenging her like, this is a problem. And so she realizes it's a problem too. And so she just kind of stops on her own. Pure willpower. In the process of that, though, she sort of accepts that she is going to be in searing pain, what she describes as razor blades going up and down her bones on the inside of her body all day long, where sometimes she had to crawl across the floor because she couldn't bear to walk, the amount of sensitivity in her body. So she's in that state. And I met her at some kind of business mastermind kind of event. She was out on the porch just kind of by herself, and she seemed a little forlorn. And I went to talk to her, and she was having a hard time. She was there focusing on her business, and she was trying to like keep the other stuff in the back of her mind. But she started talking about, some of the struggles she was having in her life. And this frequently happens. People come to me for one reason, and they suddenly realize that all of the things they're struggling with are interconnected. So I start to see this thing build up inside of her system. And I see, this is lots of training where I've been looking at this, but I start to see and feel that there's this tension that's building up in the middle of her back. And so I just ask her, like, can I just do something real quick? So I have her breathe in, I have her breathe out. I give her a thump on the back, just kind of with the cup of my palm here, or like the cup of my fist here. And, it's not light, but it's not super hard. And then I have her do it again, and I do it a little harder, and I have her do a third one, and I give her a really good solid thump on her back, just in that spot. I know what I'm doing. She's obviously never seen this before. So she turns around with her eyes a little bit freaked out. And then I tell her to breathe. And then all of a sudden she kind of like settles and is confused for a second, doesn't know what to do. And then I had to run. And so at like 3 a.m. that morning, I get a text from her that I find the next day. And she had been sitting in a chair in the living room for hours. And for the first time in 7 years, there was no pain in her body. and she didn't want to move because this was the quietest her body had been in so long. So she's texting just with her thumb, trying, what did you do? How does this work? And so I had to kind of take her a piece at a time and show her what I was doing. Ultimately, what it boiled down to is with a chronic pain, you have some things that happen in the body. The pain is an alarm system. It's a beautiful process that the body has, but it's produced by the brain. It's not produced by the body. And so those little thumps on her back did was it was basically like a radar flash to her whole body that forced her brain to reassess the situation. Up until that point, a lot of little things triggered pain. But then what I did was give her brain something to compare their normal pain with. And all of a sudden it was like, hold on a second. Maybe we're not in as much pain as we need. All the nociceptors kind of stopped their riot for a second. And they're like, okay, let's focus all forward firepower on this guy named Bob. And let's make him the enemy. And in the process of marshaling all of her body to focus on something different, it forgot that like it was freaking out about tiny little things. And suddenly this new context of physiological sensation reset her brain to where it stopped having pain. And so even though she did have some swelling from time to time, and a few things have happened since then over the years, the pain has never come back. And she has been fine since then. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. So a long time, just from some simple body practice that is more intense than most people want to do, but calculated to make the nervous system itself decide maybe what I was doing up until now is not the smartest thing. And as soon as it figures that out, it makes another decision at a very subconscious level that doesn't have to be like talked through, or you don't have to use affirmations for. The body's just like, nope, I'm not doing this again. That one is too painful, or that one is too unbearable. And then it becomes an automatic response from then on. So pain is really the brain's opinion. 100% of the time, all the leading pain scientists, 100% of the time, pain is an opinion about what's going on inside of your body. And that opinion is subject to change depending on the context that you give it. And a lot of the work that I do with people is give their body and their mind an entirely different context without denying what they've been going through, but like opening up the world a little bit and helping them realize, wow, what I've been going through is a picture on the wall of a much larger reality that I can go explore. And I don't have to sit here and stare at this picture of pain for the rest of my life. And that's been really powerful. My dad currently is in dealing with stage 4 cancer. And right in the very beginning of it, there was so much pain in his body. So I went up and I spent a couple of weeks with him doing some of these very, very simple things. And he didn't have the energy. He's obviously not in a condition for me to whack him and all of him. So it was really gentle stuff where I was training him how to move and how to use his own voice to start to stimulate his nerves in such a way that this blissful feeling of pleasure starts to run through his entire body. All of the pain meds that we have in the world, they only work because our body already produces that kind of pain medication. And the pain meds are a poor substitute to what you can produce on the inside. And all you have to do is learn how to stimulate your body to produce it on its own. And then you're able to walk free.
That's just remarkable how that comes together, and how the human mind can make up these stories that we just believe over and over and over again until we're like, oh, my back is in so much pain, I can't move.
Absolutely. The placebo effect has been documented for years. The nocebo effect, which is less well known, but it's basically the flip side of that coin, which is if you believe everything's bad, then you'll experience that. If you believe everything's amazing, you'll experience that. It's been documented for years having really physiological effects on spontaneous remission from diseases and all kinds of other stuff. That's why the pharmaceutical industry matches and measures things against placebo. If it works better than convincing a person that this will work, then okay, maybe that's a pharmaceutical worth using. And the human mind is that powerful. So it's definitely a piece of the puzzle. Even in psychology, a lot of the research indicates that one of the greatest measurements about whether or not a person is going to see success in therapy is if they believe that the therapy will actually do the trick. If they don't believe it, then it doesn't matter how much therapy they get.
And so when you work with people that, let's say that they have depression, anxiety, or something going on that we would consider, I'm doing like little air quotes here, like mentally, there's some kind of mental condition. Does it apply the same way, except you're not hitting them across the head? You're chatting with them, right?
Yes. Actually, what I would say is you have neurons everywhere, and a neuron is often considered the thing you would call a brain cell. Yes, you have 86 billion in your head, but you have them all over your body. You have 70 trillion human cells, and a lot of those are neurons, nerve cells. Every nerve cell has the ability, every cell in the body has the ability to learn, to think, to have memory, to respond. The neurons in your heart have a memory and an intelligence and a decision-making capacity. So do the neurons in your gut, which is the size of like a dog's brain. So a lot of people are talking about mental health as if it's a separate thing from body health, and it isn't. This is why a lot of diet stuff is coming out around like the relationship between your gut microbiome and your brain. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. The more at ease your body is, the more at ease your mind will be. Over and over and over again, this has been borne out and all the stuff. So people come to me for depression and anxiety and stuff. A lot of the stuff we do is I have some online stuff that they're doing and yes, we're talking to them through some of the kind of core issues in their life that their mind is kind of running loops around. But we have them come in for these retreats, and I'm taking them through physical experiences. I'm helping them see the link between, wow, when I feel depressed, this is what my body does. And not my whole body is not even depressed. My fingernails aren't weeping about the past. My nose hairs aren't busy being all sad and sappy about, or they wish that they belonged better. My earlobes aren't busy like angry at my neighbor. All of these things happen, and it sounds stupid, but when a person recognizes that the thing that they're calling depression, and they go, I have depression, and I ask them, well, what part of you has depression? Suddenly it's smaller when they realize it's really only a few bits of their body that's involved. Maybe their energy drops a little bit. Maybe it's just in their chest. Maybe they feel themselves like sagging or slumping in their chair, or maybe they feel their breath slow way, way down. And then I show them how to work with those little levers. This way, they don't need some specialist to come in the future. They can just train themselves to do it on their own and eventually on autopilot. So I teach them how to use their breathing and their movement and their posture and their voice and these other things to produce in really rapid succession a massive change in how they feel. Then they can't say they're depressed anymore. They can't say they're panicked anymore. They can't say they're anxious anymore. They can't claim, a lot of these diagnoses that are bandied about as if they're identities, because suddenly they've trained their body to be different. So the process really is the same. I take them through these things where I'm having them move. I'm putting their system, I'm having them map their entire nervous system in all these different type of events, intense ones and really silent ones and soft ones. And in the middle of that, they discover, wow, I'm okay in the middle of this. And that kind of evidence to the brain makes the brain suddenly stop assessing life as if it's a threat. And when life goes from not being a threat to something that is totally like manageable, and then when it goes from manageable to an opportunity and a possibility, the kind of change that happens in a person is absolutely phenomenal. All of them, everyone because we follow up with them after the retreats, and every single one we talk to, even if they're still trying to figure out a few pieces of the puzzle, all of them are like, everything's changed since then. My family notices I'm no longer angry. I'm no longer stuck in these. I used to get stuck in a rut for months, and now it takes me like 10 minutes or an hour. And suddenly I'm back out of it and everything's fine, because their body got the message. We bypassed all of this. Well, let's talk about it. And so when it makes sense to you and you understand, suddenly you'll have an aha moment, and that'll fix things. Aha moments are the biggest deceivers on the planet, because you get this positive experience from a thought, and somehow that makes us think that we've actually changed all the rest of the body, but really only the mind got the memo. The conscious mind got the memo, and the rest of the body still has this innate reaction to life that's saying, that's great, mind. I get that you have learned a new way to look at this, but right now I don't see that. And I'm going to continue operating as if this is a threat until it's not. There's a story of Hiroo Onoda, who was in the Vietnam War. He was not Vietnam, World War II. Yeah, he was a Japanese soldier. He was fighting out in the Philippines, and the war ended. And the Americans were like sending out news and all this other stuff, and he took that as a farce. He thought that the war hadn't ended, that this was just some ruse. And so after World War II ends, he continues with his group of soldiers. They're fighting for 30 years. It might have been 33 years. I can't remember the exact amount of time, but it was a long time, still killing people, still operating in survival mode for that long, decades long, even though the war had ended, because he didn't trust the source. And it was only when they called in his superior officer to come and tell him to stand down, that's when he was finally able to accept it. And he went back home as a hero to Japan, and then he went to Brazil and all these other things. And I look at that story and I go, this is the sad state of our society right now, is that we allow people to believe that the war is still on when it doesn't have to be. And so they stay there for decades longer in trauma, in pain. Lee, one of my clients, he was sexually abused by his mom, and verbally and emotionally abused from the time he was born until he was 16. So all of his abuse, all of his life was like early childhood was conditioned around having to serve other people, and all of the stuff that comes with that. And he eventually got kicked out of the house and adopted by another family, and spent the next several decades of his life, almost 4 decades of his life, certifying in trauma, speaking at national conventions, like to thousands of people about the effects of child abuse and what needs to happen, getting certified in suicide prevention and all of these different things, and being a good soldier is what he used to say, just like Onoda. And there was no sense in any of that anybody could ever be free. And then he came to one of these retreats, and I started pushing him through things, and he had done some of the preparatory work we have him do. And within I think it was on the 3rd day, all of a sudden something broke inside of him. His capacity to hold on to that old trauma disappears. And by the time he leaves, everything, all this pain and anguish around his mom was gone. And he didn't know what to do with his life because he'd spent so long being a soldier at war and being hailed for it and lauded for it and applauded for fighting the good fight and continuing to be there, when the reality is it doesn't take long to get rid of decades of trauma, because it's all right here in the body. It's not the past you have to deal with. It's in this present moment. What is the state of your body? And how is its muscle tensions and its posture and its breathing patterns and all these things? And when those start to get challenged and change, the identity that's associated with them falls away. And he used to tell me afterwards, like, wow, if that could change so fast, what else is possible? And that's really what I try to give people, is like, let's stop believing that things are impossible. Let's stop believing you're going to be limited to one thing forever. And let's start really grabbing onto the possibility that in days, weeks, months, your entire life can look very different if you're willing to really address things at their core, which is the source of your experience, which is at the body.
My goodness, Bob, I found your work to be so impactful. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more, not just about your work that you do in your book, Built for Freedom, but also the retreats that you have?
Yeah, so if you go to thefreedomspecialist.com, there, I think there's a link for the book there on the page. So if you wanted to get a digital copy, you can also buy it on Amazon. But then on that page, you can also find information about retreats, about online programs you can do from home, and all of the other stuff that we're into, including the nonprofit. We've started to try and raise funds for the people that don't have the ability to pay for themselves and get the help that they need. Really, it's a place for, whether you're struggling or whether someone else you know of is struggling, it's a place that's meant to be a resource. There's even a link there to my podcast where we have several hundred episodes covering all kinds of different things, just as a free resource for the people that need a place to start.
Well, Bob, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
It was my pleasure, Marianne. Thank you so much for hosting it. And to everybody who listened, also, thank you for taking the time. You deserve it for sure.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your work at the Freedom Specialist. If you'd like to visit Bob at his website, again, that website is thefreedomspecialist.com for more information on his work and also his book, Built for Freedom. On that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an actor, public speaker, or an executive telling your story over Zoom? Jean-Louis Rodrigue and Scott Weintraub's new book, Back to the Body, takes the process they use to coach top Hollywood talent like Margot Robbie, Jack Black, and Ke Huy Quan and makes it available to everyone. Using your body and its energy as a point of departure, your work will gain an enhanced level of performance and depth. Back to the Body, available on Amazon and wherever books are sold.
Every day, pets are surrendered and abandoned. For these helpless and hurting animals, Paws Humane Society acts as a voice for the voiceless, providing hope for a brighter future. You can make a difference in the life of a shelter pet. Become a humane hero today. Just $10 a month will provide much-needed food, shelter, medical care, and love. It takes a community. It takes heroes like you. Together we can. Together we will. Together we are Paws Humane. Visit pawshumane.org to be a hero in every animal story.
What if everything we think we know about addiction, depression, anxiety, and trauma is missing the one key element that will actually let you walk away from them for good? My name's Bob Gardner, founder of The Freedom Specialist and creator of a body-based approach that eliminates suffering and creates happiness, health, and well-being on autopilot. You can read all about it in my book, Built for Freedom, or start your own adventure toward lasting freedom at thefreedomspecialist.com.
If you want to stop divorce fast, you do not need to waste years in therapy. You do not need to work on yourself, and you do not even have to have your spouse on board. If your spouse wants out, if they're filing for divorce, separation, or having an affair, what you need is a proven process to turn your marriage around. Book a free breakthrough session with us at highthrivecoaching.com/apply.
Dr. Richard London, who has 25 years of experience being known as the Man of Steel with the Heart of Velvet, presents the Life Wellness System, The Road to Yes, a mentoring system that brings you to becoming a wellness heir. Imagine having wealth, wellness, love, peace, and spirituality in abundance and balance now. Visit doctorateoflife.com or call 720-213-8021 for a free 15-minute wellness evaluation.
Hi, this is Jana Wilson, author of Wise Little One, Learning to Love and Listen to My Inner Child, a best-selling prescriptive memoir in inner child healing. I'm also the founder of the Emotional Healing System. The inner child, simply put, is your feelings, both positive and negative. If you'd like to learn to love and listen to your wise little one, pick up my book at Amazon or visit my website at janawilson.com. It's never too late to have a happy childhood.
The first thing you need to know about me is that I love my kids, but they are not my everything. They used to be, but that's when my entire life fell apart. In order to pick back up the pieces, I had to put the love I have for myself before everything else, including my kids. I'm Jessica Dennehy, and I own multiple businesses. I'm a best-selling author, and I have all the strategies that I've used to make my life what it is today. And I'm going to teach you how to do them in my new book, Selfish is a Superpower. So go get your copy today on Barnes & Noble or jessicadennehy.com.
Announcing a revolutionary tool for wellness. Scalar Light has the ability to enhance and harmonize your own bioenergies. With Scalar Light, you can get started in just minutes and begin feeling better the very next day. Scalar Light is a remote energy that gently and subtly works with your own body's bioenergies, increases pro-cellular wellness, and enhances your body's immunity.
Experience the benefits of Scalar Light. Try a complimentary 15-day experience at scalarlight.com.
In your hands lie ancestral patterns. These patterns shape how you think, what you struggle with, and experiences you love, your life pattern. We're going into the latest neuroscience of biological hand analysis, a realm beyond palmistry where science and the soul entwine. Hand analysis is the latest method to transform lifelong patterns. I am Master Hand Analyst Brent Bruning. Join us and visit thepowerinyourhands.com.
Pandemonium. Fast forward 20 years. A U.S. president seizes control of all U.S. missiles, the power grid, the banking system, and every computer in America as he hides in an underground bunker. Pandemonium, a captivating sci-fi thriller where a hidden war, psychics, aliens, artificial intelligence, and transcendental love collide with the latest media technology. Pandemonium, live to all devices. Get your copy on paperback or digital. Free sample at getpsychic.org.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.